right, welcome. The last biogeochemical cycle we'll discuss is the carbon cycle. And as usual, I'm going to ask you, why is the carbon cycle important? What organic molecules contain carbon? And hopefully you know absolutely all of them do. So, one abiotic reservoir of the carbon dioxide, or of the carbon, is the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, I want to emphasize this. There is one and only one way that carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere and fixed into the body of a living organism. Again, I repeat, there is one and only one way, and it drives me nuts. In geology textbooks, this is like represented as a tiny little arrow. I will repeat, there is one way and only one way that carbon dioxide is removed from our atmosphere and is fixed into the body of a living plant or animal. And that process is, I hope you know by now, photosynthesis. So even though we've talked about there are different ways to view photosynthesis, photosynthesis is important because it captures energy for the whole ecosystem. It produces oxygen. In this context, since this is the carbon cycle, we are looking at photosynthesis as an important because it is the one process that fixes carbon. It converts gaseous carbon to the carbon of a living organism, namely a plant. So as you should know by now, the original product of photosynthesis is glucose, but a plant can convert glucose into amino acids. A plant can convert glucose into starch, into cellulose. The wood of a tree is mainly cellulose. Once again, once the carbon is fixed, it can be passed up the food chain, all right? An animal can eat a plant. Another animal can eat that animal. So to counterbalance this, well, maybe not to counterbalance this, but it is counterbalanced. There are many processes that return carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So hopefully one that you might think of is cellular respiration. Maybe I'll switch colors here because we are putting carbon back into the atmosphere. And this pointer is sometimes very finicky, so it's very annoying. Well, we all have learning curves, right? All right, so hopefully you know not animals do cellular respiration, but plants do cellular respiration too. All plants, all animals need oxygen to intake oxygen so we can break down our food, and one of the byproducts of cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. So here, again, everything has to be a cycle because this is the carbon cycle. The carbon is fixed, becomes part of the body of the plant, then it can become part of the body of the animal, but whether it's a part of the body of the plant or the animal, through cellular respiration, it is returned to the atmosphere as a molecule of carbon dioxide. Another thing you might have read about, sorry, I'm going to stick with blue here, even though I'm drawing trees, is deforestation. Obviously, when we burn forest, we are in a habit of burning forest to make grassland, to raise cattle. All right, well, the carbon that has been fixed by the trees through photosynthesis, if you burn the forest, you put carbon dioxide back in the atmosphere. And probably a lot of you have heard that burning fossil fuels puts carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. And that is true. When you burn fossil fuels, this produces carbon dioxide. Now, I've found a lot of my students don't know what fossil fuels are. So fossil fuels are coal, oil, and gas. And by gas, I mean natural gas. And by natural gas, I mean methane. Methane is CH4. So coal, oil, and natural gas, most of us use to heat our homes. When we burn it, yes, it produces carbon dioxide and water, but also it releases a lot of heat. I've also asked my students, is gasoline a fossil fuel? And they say no, and I say yes, because gasoline is a petroleum product. So we take oil and we modify it and we get our gasoline. So whenever you burn gasoline, burn methane, burn a lump of coal, we are releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But how is this a cycle here? It looks like we have a broken loop. You have a lump of coal here. Well, how does this tie in with our cycle? It's just easier to draw coal. Well, again, what I have found throughout the years is that a lot of my students don't understand why fossil fuels are called fossil fuels. So we have to go back, once again, this marker is being finicky. We have to go back a few million years. We could go back tens of million years, even hundreds of millions of years. I am not getting my green. I'm going to be very sad if I cannot get my green. All right, I think I'm going to get my green now. Persistent pays off, right? So, what you should know by this point in the course, what type of plant life was dominant in the age of the dinosaurs. So you should be thinking ferns, and you should be thinking ginkgos, okay? So, we had photosynthesis going on at the time of the dinosaurs. Again, we're talking tens to even hundreds of millions of years ago. And carbon was fixed into these ferns and these ginkgos. And you had different kinds of dinosaurs eating the plant life. You had your herbivores, all right, eating the plant life. I'm just really, here we go. Oh, what should we make color? Should we make our herbivores? I'm just going to put animal here. So we have animals eating the ferns, animals eating the ginkgos, and then, oh, let's make a carnivore here. You have T-Rex here. Yeah, T-Rex. It eats the other dinosaurs, which have eaten the ferns. So photosynthesis has been on our planet for billions of years. So we're not going that far back in time. We're going back, let's say, 100 million years ago. This carbon was fixed and then maybe stayed in the plants, or maybe it went up the food chain. Well, this is what happens. When organisms die, one of two things happen to them. They either decompose, and by the way, decomposition puts carbon dioxide back in the atmosphere, or they fossilize. And to fossilize, they have to be in an area that's anaerobic, that's having little or no oxygen, and highly pressurized. So, if you have a little niece or nephew and you want to be mean to them, and you say, I'm going to take you out and I'm going to show you a dinosaur. Well, you can just go to a gas station and show them a drop of gasoline. Or you can show them a lump of coal. Because that's what our fossil fuels are. Coal, oil, and gas, these are the fossilized remains of plants and animals that lived millions and millions of years ago. And I'm just sort of amazed that most of my students now do not know why fossil fuels are called fossil fuels, even though you hear that term all the time in the news. So yeah, a lump of coal, those are the fossilized remains of plants and animals that lived millions and millions of years ago. So now you see that it's a cycle. Carbon was fixed millions and millions of years ago, and when we burn fossil fuels, we are releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that hasn't literally seen the light of day, that hasn't been there for millions and millions of years. All right, one little thing to round out the carbon cycle. As you know, our Earth is covered with water in the form of the oceans, and some carbon dioxide does dissolve into the water, and the water also releases carbon dioxide. So, I apologize, I have very crude drawing, but this is indeed the carbon cycle. This is very well understood. Now, why is this significant? Why has this been in the news a lot lately? Well, a lot of people are concerned that humans have been engaging in activities that affect the global levels of carbon dioxide. So what have we been doing? Well, if you look in the last 100 years, we have been burning a lot of forest, and when you burn forest, that increases levels of carbon dioxide, or at least you would imagine it would. And especially in the last 50 years, our consumption of fossil fuels have been growing exponentially. So as we burn more and more fossil fuels, you would predict that would put more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And when you look at deforestation, it's actually a double whammy, because as you have fewer trees, you're going to decrease photosynthesis. Well, what does photosynthesis do? It removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So if you decrease levels of photosynthesis, you would predict global levels of carbon dioxide would increase. And it's not just deforestation. Let's face it, in the developed world, when we see a plot of green space, you know what we call it? We call it undeveloped. And we don't value plants just sitting there photosynthesizing, removing carbon from the atmosphere. We think, no, we have to put an office building there and pave over it with a parking lot. Green space, undeveloped, bad. Sorry to oversimplify it, but that seems to be the mentality. So there have been several ways that we humans have decreased the rates of photosynthesis, either by diminishing green spaces or polluting our oceans. And if you decrease photosynthesis, you would predict global carbon dioxide levels to be rising. Now again, who cares if global carbon dioxide levels are rising? I mean, carbon dioxide is not a poison. Carbon monoxide is a poison. If you breathe in carbon monoxide, CO, yeah, you will die. It will bind to your hemoglobin and you will die. But we are not talking about carbon monoxide. No, we are talking about carbon dioxide. And if you inhale carbon dioxide, it will not hurt you, unless, of course, that's all you inhale and then you die because of lack of oxygen. So if indeed human activities are altering our atmosphere, if indeed human activities are increasing the global levels of carbon dioxide, why should you care? And if you're thinking, oh, greenhouse effect, global warming, you are correct. If you are thinking ozone, you are not correct. And I've found a lot of my students have confused the issue of global warming, greenhouse effect with ozone depletion. These are two different issues. So, two questions. What is the difference between the ozone problem and the global climate change greenhouse problem? And second of all, is this true? I mean, just because we hypothesize, I mean, we get the carbon cycle, we get it. And we observe human activities. And by all logic, these human activities should be increasing global levels of carbon dioxide. But you know what? Logic is not good enough in science. We need the data. If you don't have data to back up your idea, just go home. So in the next two videos, we'll first of all distinguish between these two global issues. I guess if you already know the difference, you can skip the second video. And then the third issue, we'll investigate what we really know about climate change and what don't we know. I'll meet you there.